An event hosted by the League of Women Voters in Freeport shines a light on what some people argue is a form of voter suppression, gerrymandering. It's drawing districts' lines favorable to a particular party. The event featured Ryan Tolley, executive director of the nonprofit group Change Illinois. He gave a presentation on the practice of gerrymandering. He says by ending that practice, it can restore trust in the election process.
We want to make sure that people who are living day-to-day lives in these communities has real impacts on their lives, and they better be served by a process that wasn't just trying to entrench political power.